Hey guys, how's it going? This is StackStracker777, and today we're going to do a little behind the scenes on the Skyrim craft animation. I know there have been a few questions asked about this animation, and yeah. So, the rap was by Dan Bull. A few people for some reason asked, you know, if it was me rapping, and obviously it's not me. I don't have that kind of talent for music, as far as music goes. But yeah, also, before I start, I have started to do intros for pretty much anyone that wants them, but they are $30, and that's the starting price. If they get any more complex, then it starts to go up, but the base price is $30, and it's got to be paid out via PayPal. So yeah, if you're interested in that, hit me up on YouTube with a PM. Trying to make some money to save up for our laptops, so yeah, this doing intros is really going to help me, accomplish that. Anyways, let's get into the behind the scenes. Alright, so this is our starting scene. I have pretty much all the elements pretty much separated out into different layers, and this makes just stuff overall easier. Usually I have all of my characters on one individual layer with the camera. And yeah. And this little squiggly line right here is a path I had my camera follow for a amount of time. It was just up until it got it hit this point right here. This, I don't even know why that's even still there, but yeah, and after it, hits that point, the camera sort of starts free roaming. But yeah, I basically just added a parent to the camera, and I added a clamp to constraint, and after it had completed its course, I just turned influence to 0, so I wouldn't write on it anymore, and that's basically how I accomplished that. And the camera rotates on this empty right here. This thing definitely makes it easier to sort of put a focus on the camera and have it, focus on one point. It really makes things so much easier. So yeah, that's basically how I did that, and yeah. What else? I know someone asked about, hold on. I got a list here, so I'm just marking stuff off. Someone asked about, of course, the spell that he casts. That's Ice Shard from the Skyrim game. I tried to implement as many elements from the game as possible, excluding, Ava to the knee jokes, because those are worn out. But yeah, basically how I did that was, obviously, I have a particle system on the Ice Shard itself. And let's take a look at that particle system right now. Just gonna free the bake on it. Holy crap, free the bake. And basically I just those are just a bunch of cubes, and I think I have the cubes on a different layer that's just not seen right now. No, that's something else. This is basically the object I used for it. It'll basically look like something like this. I'll tell you what that is later, but yeah, this is basically the material of the particles that are coming out of the Ice Shard, and I have real-time rendering on right now, so yeah. Anyways, back to that. I'll just keep real-time rendering on, I guess, just to sort of show you guys. Yeah, that's basically what it'll look like, excluding motion blur, which actually adds a lot to it. Makes it look not as bad as it does right now, that's for sure. Yeah, and let's see. As far as the particles go, I just basically, to make them float around, I just went to the field weights and turned gravity to 0, and I think I had them on. No, I just kept them on default Newtonian physics. For a couple of the particle system, I use Boyd's just because they, just the way they move is something I like. I really like the way they move. But yeah, I just, yeah, that's really all I do. I just turn the gravity off on them. And yeah, so yeah, it was pretty simple for that spell. Okay, well, moving on, oops, hit my caps lock. Just select the rest of these layers. It's not working. Alright. Moving on to, I think, the next thing would probably be the shout. So, what was the shout? Well, it was that weird looking thing you saw earlier. It was... where is it? Alright. Well, it was... I think it was this. No, it was this. Yeah. This was basically what the shout was. This little weird, jagged looking donut thing. Basically what I did is just I just added a torus object, and I sort of just randomly, I think I used a modifier to make it look all jagged. I can't remember what modifier I used, but yeah, I just made it look jagged, and then I let motion blur do the rest. I would have done maybe I would have tried smoke, but I can't actually try it in Cycles right now because Cycles does not currently support that. So yeah, I just had to use motion blur to sort of sell the effect, and I think it sold pretty well. I just sort of made it move across the screen really fast, and I made it start out small, and as it got further across the screen, made it larger. And that's basically how I accomplished that effect, and nothing like too crazy. So yeah. Alright, I think that's really all for this scene. This scene was pretty short, to be honest. After the shout and that slow motion scene, that was literally it. Yeah, for that scene. So let's move on to scene 2. This was a lot of people's favorite part. I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up for me. I like this part, and I also like the very last scene. But yeah. Also, a lot of you may be wondering what all these little markers, or they're called markers, but what all these arrows are for. And basically, I just use those as sort of like a guide for events that are supposed to take place. And it definitely helped me with matching the audio to the video at certain points. So yeah. Yeah, and I basically did the same thing with the magic on this, except there's just a sphere right there, and I made the sphere invisible, of course. And I think I just turned the gravity to 0. I didn't do anything too crazy with it either. Yeah, Newtonian, gravity off. Yeah, it's very, very basic particle system. And of course, I changed the render to object and used the same cubes from the previous one file. So yeah. And yeah, let's see what else. And yeah, like I said, the empty really helps out because I just sort of made it swing like that while he was running, and I think that made it look really good. It sort of motion blurred it up too, made it look real nice. So yeah, and then here comes the derpy dragon. As you can see, there's a gap there, and this is a very weird, and it's not the best dragon rig, but I'm not complaining because I didn't make it, and I couldn't make it because I'm not very good at rigging. So yeah, that was sort of a pain to mess with, but I eventually got it to work. So yeah, and actually he really wasn't even grabbing the tail. If you go back and watch it, sort of motion blur sort of covered some of that up, but not a lot of it. And yeah, it throws him up in the air, and he goes flying, and he comes back down and stabs the dragon. So yeah, and I really don't know how many people noticed, but the dragon did actually fly in on this part, and he did hit the wall. And yeah, you can see him sort of fall. And, there's also another kind of funny thing is I really didn't have a lot of room to work with as far as the space from here to here. As you can see, it's really not a lot, so throughout that, no one seemed to notice very much, but the dragon would skip back a bunch. Like, he would fly forward, and then the first skip back was right there. He skips back, and that was only a bit. And I think he skipped back, or is that just a change camera? Oh yeah, he just changed camera angles. And then he skips back again, and then he skips forward, and then he flies into there. And yeah, I just sort of used different camera angles throughout that to sort of sell it, making it, you know, look like he was actually still going forward and stuff like that. So I think it worked out pretty well. And yeah, moving on. Yeah, this next part, he stabs that guy in the stomach and picks up that spear. And sort of making guys pick up objects is kind of difficult in Blender. I mean, it's not really difficult, it's more annoying because it's a hassle, because just the parenting system needs work, and I'll show you why. Let's see. Basically, you get add a constraint. It's called a child of constraint. And you parent it to a bone, which in this case it's that bone right there. And when you don't want him to have any effect on you just turn the influence to 0, and when you do want him to have effect on you turn the influence to 1. So yeah, that's all, you know, easy and stuff. But when you turn the influence off, it, you know, flies off screen, so you gotta you gotta put it back in the same spot again, and that's kind of frustrating. But you know, that's just something you gotta deal with in Blender. So yeah, and sort of did the same thing with the throwing part. Took off the influence, which made it fly across the screen again, and I had to put it back in its position. And yeah. And I thought about doing a physics simulation for this sword, but I thought against it. I eventually just decided not to, and animated it by hand, which I think it turned out pretty well. So yeah. What next? Yeah, motion blur definitely helped out a lot, but it also sort of got annoying at some parts, because this is more of a product of just how I animate. Due to the motion blur and my camera switching, I use only one camera throughout that whole animation, which in some cases is considered not the best idea. But basically what will happen, like before the camera switch, and at 1 frame before and 1 frame after the camera switch, I'll just render it for you. It sort of blurs everything in a very weird way, and I had to go back and re-render those individual frames, which took quite a while. So I'll just lower the samples in it. I'm just gonna lower it to about 25, I guess. And samples is just it reduces the noise, and you're about to see what noise is in a second, just from rendering this out. Yeah, noise is just the little black dots and stuff on the screen, but yeah, as you can see, it looks sort of distorted and weird. And that's just a product of having a camera move over 1 frame, and you know, motion blur flips out and think it's moving really fast, so it blurs the frame before and the frame after. So yeah, that's just sort of something I had to deal with, but yeah, it was fine. And yeah, motion blur is also still a work in progress, because it doesn't actually blur rigs. Like anything that deforms with, you know, a rig, it doesn't blur it. It'll blur the objects, but it won't blur the actual rig. So yeah. And after that, it was just you know, a couple slow motion shots, and a shot up here of him, you know, stabbing him in the head, shooting another ice spike at him. I use the same technique as before, and then he spawns an axe which that's a spell from the game also. That's just a bunch of stuff with zero gravity, of course. I don't think that is Voids either. Um, Actually, it did have a tiny bit of weight. But yeah, that one was sort of annoying to mess with because it just wasn't acting the way I wanted it to, and I eventually got it right by just messing with the drag and the Brownian and all that stuff. So yeah. I think that's it for this blend file. Moving on to the cave scene. And also, just to put things in perspective for you guys, the first scene took 7 minutes to render per frame. The second scene took about 3 minutes per frame. And this third scene, since it's really small and it's just basically a cave system, it took about 1 minute and 30 seconds per frame. So yeah. Let's move on to the third scene, which is, yeah, it's the most interesting in my opinion. And yeah, it just starts out with him, running through the cave system. Got some snow up there to show that he's running from, outside and whatnot. And yeah, he's sort of, he's supposed to be killing a skeleton right there, and the head sort of bounces by, and I also animated that by hands. Turned out extremely well, I think. And yeah, and then he just kicks him and runs off, and there's that head that rolled off, off camera, just sitting right there. And then he throws this potion down, and that potion was definitely a challenge to model just because the textures weren't lining up. I'm not gonna get too much into that though. And these particles are definitely probably the most interesting ones. Let's look at those particles. Basically, I had this particle system was made not of one object, but it was made of a whole group. And I think this one actually used, yeah, let's see. Did it use? Yeah, it used the Voids. And those sort of just like, I don't know, they Voids sort of have a bit of AI in them, and they sort of just like fly around randomly. And I just like the way it looks, and I don't have to do too much tweaking in the physics or anything. So, yeah. And of course, I turned the field weights to 0. I think, yep. And yeah, onto the group that I used with this. As you can see, there are these 3 objects, and basically I had these linked up with these each had their own shape keys, and I just keyframed the shape keys to sort of change over time, and I keyframed 3 different ones at different times. So yeah, that's basically what it did, and I put them all in a group and put that group into the particle system. So that's basically how I did that one. And let's moving on. What else? Yeah, he hits that and he stabs him, moves him over. I just basically eyeballed that whole stabbing and dragging him across. I didn't do any parenting for that. Or when he's, being carried along by the sword, I didn't do any parenting for that. Now, arrows, of course, were just parented to different bones. Like that one was to the head, that one was obviously to this arm right here. And the rest were pretty much to the back bones right there. And yeah, that was what those did. And yeah, and he just throws them on the floor, and then another slow motion shot right there. And then the creeper comes in, and basically, obviously, since, like I said earlier, Cycles doesn't support the smoke sim, I can't do explosions, so I had to do some off-camera magic. I had a lamp off-screen. Basically, I just keyframed that to, emit orange light, and I had the camera shake along with it to sell it a bit more, and I had him, start running at him and changing his material to white and putting an emit value on his material to make him glow after he goes through compositing and whatnot. And yeah, I think that sold it pretty well. I don't know what you guys thought of it, but yeah, that's basically how I did that. And after we're done looking at all this stuff, I'll show you my compositing setup for those who are curious. And this one was pretty normal. There were actually 2 spiders in this. I don't know if anyone saw it. It was kind of hard for me to even see it after I had rendered it. But yeah, he turns around and of course smacks the zombie that's coming at him in the head, and then he turns around and he actually does throw that spider at another spider. I don't know how many people saw it. Probably should have slowed that clip down to make it, to make sure you saw it, but I really was sort of, the time was sort of cramped. I didn't have a lot of space for much more stuff, so yeah. And then this one was also another fast one. I just needed some filler up until the very ends of, the animation. And basically I just used the same technique I did on him. Use some voids and turn off the gravity on him. And I parented to a group of them. I didn't do any shape keys with those. I just did a couple of different objects, which are right here. Just those are all in a group. As you can see, the green outline, or looks kind of bluish, but yeah. I just put those in a group and put that into the particle system. So yeah, it was pretty. This scene was kind of fast, but I had to get it out, so yeah, I had to put in some filler. So yeah, and he does shoot 2 ice spikes. I know it was kind of hard to see. Yeah, he does end up shooting 2 ice spikes at him, and then he just falls over. And on to the last scene. Of course, the last scene only took about 25 or so seconds to render because it was pretty small. And yeah, I just sort of had him lean back, and when the camera sort of zoomed out or whatever, I just had him lean back up, so it looked like he was just, I don't know, coming out of nowhere basically. And I think that worked out pretty well, but of course the motion blur sort of messed up, and his face looked like it was kind of coming through the helmet for a little bit there. If you go back and watch the animation, since this obviously isn't tied to the rig, it gets affected by the motion blur, so that was one of the problems I had. And yeah, this part was decently easy. Took about maybe an hour to animate. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much as in-depth as I want to go. If you ask any questions, I'll probably answer them in the comments down below. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want an intro, I will do one. Just send me a PM on YouTube, and we can, get stuff worked out. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys later. I really like that you guys enjoyed the animation and all that jazz. Biggest thanks goes out to obviously Dan Vole for sparking the original idea by making that music, and definitely King Jojo and Bebop Fox for sharing my video, and Bebop Fox for putting on a show, and yeah, King Jojo for just showing it around and stuff, getting it a bit more viewage, and obviously you guys for subscribing and watching my videos and sharing it with some of your friends. So yeah, I'm really pleased with how this animation turned out and the reaction it got. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. Bye.